So I'm here to tell my story. I've been sitting on the sidelines watching quietly as so many people are talking about pedogate and pedophilia and coming forward with their stories. And I've been considering coming forward with my story for a long time. However, I just never really wanted to because mine involves a lot more than just sexual abuse. Mine involves murder. And I've never wanted to tell my story for fear or for, I don't know how you'd say it, but out of maybe respect for the victims' families. Um, I never said anything to anybody about anything, but um, listening to Isaac Happy and having him encourage others to come and speak out. And, you know, I'm to the point in my life, I'm 51 years old. I think it's time to tell my story. I think it's time to, even if I can just help one person get through it and to understand that because this has happened to you, it doesn't mean a lifetime sentence. You can become a beautiful, productive member of society because of what happened to you and not in spite of what happened to you. So, my story, I was born in 1967. My mom and dad divorced when I was 2 years old, and my dad was an alcoholic and he kind of disappeared. And for the next several years, he was in and out of my life periodically. I was the type of child that was very meek, very mild, never wanted to cause waves, did what I was told. And at 5 years old, my uncle started molesting me. And of course, I never told anybody because I didn't know that it was wrong. I mean, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to say it to anybody. The memories of that first incident are extremely clear to this day for me. I won't go into details because it's nothing anybody needs to hear, other than the fact that I can close my eyes and I can go back to that day, clear as day. I think my loss of a father and my meek and mildness and no self confidence caused me to be what pedophiles are attracted to. Subsequently, I was abused by several males around me over the years, including my best friend's father, who was also molesting her. I never told really anybody about anything for a very long time. Then, when I was 13, I started going through some really, really traumatic stuff. You know, at that age, especially for girls, you go through all these traumatic hormonal things that cause you to be overly dramatic, over emotional, very selfish as teenagers are. And at 13, I had two major losses and a major traumatic event happen to me that caused me to go just completely out of control. At 13, my dad, who had been back in my life for a while, decided to move to California with his new wife and my two stepbrothers. And I was really traumatized by that. And then my grandparents, my dad's parents, whom I loved dearly, they were my safe haven. I would go there every other weekend. And it was just, I loved them dearly. They loved me dearly. And they always tried to make up for what my dad couldn't do for me. They decided to move to Georgia. So I lost basically both sets of parents on that side. My mom also was remarried. I was an only child up until that point, and she got pregnant, and I had a little sister at 13 years old. And that was a very traumatic thing for me. I was very, very jealous of her for a very long time. I didn't know how to resolve it. I at that time I was in 8th grade. I had a best friend named Chris, who her and I were kind of like the social outcasts in school. So we kind of stuck together. And I spent a lot of time over at her house. And she had several siblings, and I ended up meeting her brother Andy. And I don't know if you can call it instant attraction, karma, true love at first sight, or whatever you want to call it, but it was there. It was just like sparks flew. But of course, I was too young to start dating, and my mom and stepdad wouldn't let me date. And so for the next year or so, I continued to sneak seeing Andy through Chris. And at 14, things got really, really traumatic with my stepdad, who was a major alcoholic. When you, when he wasn't drinking, he was the nicest guy ever, and I considered him my dad. But when the minute you put alcohol in him, he turned into a demon, literally. So I went through a major incident with him, and I had begged my mom at the time to let me go live somewhere else. I didn't care where, just get me out of the house. And I didn't want to wait, so I decided to run away with Chris to the city. So let me preface this by saying one time when I was staying at Chris's house, Andy had come out he was living in the city with his boss named Robin, and they were coming out. They did electrical work and businesses, and they were coming out to visit and see his dad and pick up some stuff. And Andy decided to stay at his dad's house because I was there. And Robin, now mind you, I'm 14 years old and this man is 30 something. I'm walking by him in the kitchen and he grabs me and he tries to kiss me. Which should have been my first warning sign, and I was just too dumb and naive to even see it. And Andy got really upset, and Robin left. So I just wanted to preface that by just establishing how forward Robin was with me at 14 years old. So Chris and I ran away. And we ended up going to Andy's ex-girlfriend's house in the city because we had nowhere else to go. And we were waiting for Robin and Andy to pick us up. And they finally came over, and I was walking around the table, dining room table, to talk to Andy, and Robin just reached out and grabbed me and pulled me onto his lap. And Andy had looked at him at the time and told him to leave me alone and don't touch me ever again. Well, we ended up going back to Robin's house. Now, Robin is married. He's got a wife, Rosemary, and 3 kids. And they're all under the age of 10 at the time. His youngest was 2 maybe at that time. So it was established that I was going to stay with them while I had run away. And they had an extra bed in their youngest son's room because he was still in a crib. And that first night there, Robin pulls out this bottle of pills, and big green pills. And he gives Andy a couple and he gives me one. Now, I didn't know what they were at the time. I was told they were a downer. Now, being older and realizing what they were was Placidils. So the next thing I know, I look over and Andy is out, passed out. And I decide I'm going to get up and I'm going to go get ready for bed and go to bed. Well, I'm in the bathroom, and I guess the Placidil hit me because the room started spinning, and I fell over a little bit when I was trying to sit down to go potty. And Robin's there knocking on the door. Are you okay? Are you okay? Or, wanting to come in and stuff. And I wouldn't let him, obviously. Well, for bed that night, I had wore a button-down shirt, man's oversized button-down shirt for bed. that night I had what I thought was this dream of Robin standing in the doorway of the bedroom where I was staying, and you could see the light from the hallway coming in through the room, and he was wearing white pajama pants, and it just was it's a very vivid memory. And the next thing I remember is him laying next to me in bed, unbuttoning my shirt. And I woke up the next morning thinking, wow, what a vivid dream. And then I looked down and my shirt was unbuttoned. So I don't know what he did to me that night or what he didn't do to me that night. So I did ask him about it, and of course he denied it. And you have to understand that this man was a master manipulator. He could hypnotize people. He actually had several people that have talked to him and said that he could actually hypnotize you with his eyes and with his talk. So I went on life as normal. I had been gone for almost 3 months. And Robin and Andy decided to move me because the police had been to their house several times looking for me. And the last time they were there, Robin grabbed me and put me in the stairwell up to their attic and hid me. It was like a hidden stairwell. And he told me, but don't go upstairs to the attic because it's not finished and we don't want to see you fall through. So I just stayed there. They didn't find me. So Robin and Andy ended up moving me to this lady's house in a suburb of the city. And she was a very nice lady. She had 2 teenage children, a little bit younger than me. And Andy and Robin happened to be doing work on the electric in her attic, and I guess they had given her some story as to why I needed a place to stay. And so they were there during the day when I was there, and things started happening with Robin as far as being aggressive with me with his sexual behavior. He would walk by me and pinch my boob, pinch my butt, try and grab whatever he could. And I never said anything to Andy because I think I was afraid that Andy would think that I was causing it to happen. I don't know. I was immature 14-year-old, so I really didn't know what to do. Well, one of the last weeks I was there at this lady's house, we were all out to dinner. She was a waitress, so we were at the restaurant where she worked, and she was about to get off, so she needed to go to the store for something, and Robin said, well, why don't you take her, Andy, and I'll take Lisa back to the house. That night, he had a work van that he drove around, and it was an orange panel van with no windows in the back. That I can't even look at to this day, but he raped me in that van that night and told me that if I would ever told anybody, he would make sure his wife kills me, and he would make sure my boyfriend went down with me. So of course I never said anything to anybody. So long story short, I ended up going home. I ended up running away again for about 2 or 3 weeks, went back to Robin's, then ended up going back home again. And I do want to say that one time I was at Robin's in the middle of the night, and he was not there. Andy was, he was not. His wife, who I fully believe knew everything that this man was doing, paged him in the middle of the night, because that was back in the day of pagers and no cell phones. And he called back, and she got very quiet, and she's like, "What? Where are you?" And she raced out the door, and they were gone all night. So I don't know what happened there, but I'm trying to preface and set things up for you the right way, to tell the story in the right sequence. and to try and sum it up because it's so much more involved than what I'm even saying. So a month after being back home, found out I was pregnant from the rape. Well, I let my mom and stepdad believe that it was Andy's baby. I didn't tell Andy at the time because we weren't really seeing each other. But my decision was at that age, at the tender age of 14, I decided that I was going to keep the baby and give it up and give it to someone who wants a baby and who needs a baby to love. And I wasn't going to do the selfish thing and have an abortion. So what ended up happening is I had a miscarriage, which is honestly the best thing that could have happened in the situation. And Andy ended up moving back out to his father's house in the suburbs, and we were seeing each other all summer long. I turned 15. We had a great time that summer, and in September, I had gone over to his house, and he casually mentioned to me, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Robin?" And I said, "No, what happened to Robin?" He says, "He got arrested for attempted murder." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, apparently he picked up some prostitute in the city in his van, raped her, and tried cutting her breast off with an axe and left her for dead on the tracks." Well, she survived and she identified him. Well, subsequently, she didn't identify him. She identified the van and gave a description of him. Subsequently, this van was very hard to miss. It was an old 70s orange 6-panel van with no windows at all in the back. So, I mean, it was pretty distinct. So what ended up happening was the police pulled over Robin and another co-worker, Eddie, who worked for Robin as well. Andy, Eddie, and then Andy's brother, Tommy, all worked for Robin on and off with the electric business. So they pulled over Eddie based on the van description. They ended up arresting Robin and Eddie. And subsequently, a couple weeks later, I get a call that my mom woke me up one night and said, "I have to tell you something." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Andy's on the news." And I said, "What?" And she said, "He's been arrested for murder." He was picked up for murder. Robin and Eddie supposedly gave him up. And then I was very close with Andy's brother, Tommy, so I called him that morning when I found out, and he basically said to me that he had to tell me something critically important and to meet him later that afternoon. Well, when I went to meet him, he was not there. He had been picked up by the police as well. So, here's my world at 15 years old. My mom decided to call the police department and let them know that Andy was my boyfriend. So, of course, I had to go down for hours and hours of questioning about Andy and about things and about, they're asking me if he ever stuck hat pins in my boobs. Did they ever do anything to me, And, of course, I denied everything that happened to me. But I did witness some guns at the house and handcuffs and that type of thing. So they wanted all that information as well. So to make a really long trial story short, Robin made some kind of deal. He was never charged with any of the murders. Their group of 4 was implicated in almost 25 murders in the Chicagoland area in the 80s. Robin was never charged with murder. He was only charged with attempted murder of that prostitute. The good thing is the man is in jail for the rest of his natural life and will never get out. Tommy got 30 years in prison. Andy and Eddie both got the death penalty. Andy was the last person executed in the state of Illinois before they put the death penalty moratorium on. And to this day, Governor Ryan talks about his regret over having him executed. However, to make a long story short, during Andy's trial, they wanted me to come and testify, both for the defense and for the prosecution, and they were fighting over me. And then it was decided that they weren't going to use me at all and that they just wanted to question me. So I went down to the DA's office and with my mom, and I think it was about 16 at the time. And he asked me if Robin had ever done anything to me, and I said no. My mom was in the room. And he's like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no." So we're talking on, and he looked at me again and he goes, you want to tell me he never did anything to you? And I said, no. So he made my mom leave the room. And he took out a stack of manila folders like this, and he spread them across his desk. And he said, "Do you see all these names?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "These are all girls that Robin raped that are your age. Now you want to tell me again he didn't do anything to you?" And that was the first time I ever told anybody what happened to me. And then subsequently, as we were leaving, I told my mom what happened, and to her it was a relief, and it all made sense because she just didn't understand my stories of what happened. After that, I lost my damn mind. I got love and sex so confused as a teenager. I didn't know. I did not know. I thought sleeping with someone showed you loved them. Not saying I was a mega slut or anything like that, but I was very confused about love and sex and what it all means. And I had moved in with my grandparents at the time, and my uncle started sexually abusing me again. And I didn't feel like I had the right to say no. I don't know why. I guess it was because it was so ingrained in my past from my childhood. Long story short, I started sleeping with a lot of older men. Not a lot of older men, but older men in general. My stepdad's friend, just older gentlemen. And for the longest time, I didn't know what I was doing. And I sat down one day when I was 22 years old, started crying, and didn't stop for 2 weeks. And I realized that I had lived through more by the time I was 15 years old than most people live in their entire lifetime. And I just decided that I was gonna have a better life despite my past. I wasn't going to live my life in my past, so to speak. I have a cousin that had some similar things happen to her, and she became a major alcoholic, drug addict, and she blamed all of that on what happened to her as a child. And not that that's wrong, and that's totally her thing, but I just sat down and I thought about, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to let it run the rest of my life. And I haven't. I have 3 beautiful children. I have a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And I vowed it was never going to happen to them, and it didn't. And I just want people to know that it's out there, that it's real. And I honestly think that if you're a victim at a young age, that there's something that pedophiles can sense, that they know, they just know. And I think it's time we've outed this whole thing. I got married at 26 years old to my current husband. We've been married for 25 years, together almost 30 now. He helped me through a lot of this trauma. He had trauma of his own from his childhood that we were able to deal with. Same kind of things, sexual abuse, violence. But here's the thing, is that life is beautiful. And you need to live your life for you and to become a better person. And even if you can only help one person, that's all it takes. That's all it takes to fulfill something within yourself, and maybe to spark that change and to not feel like you're a victim and that you should be in this victim mentality, because a lot of people will do that to you. They'll put you in this pigeonhole of, oh, you're a victim, look what happened to you, and no, yeah, look what happened to me, and look what a great person I turned out to be. You know, that's what you need to be. And so I don't want to say too much more. This has already gone on for almost a half hour, but I just wanted people to know out there that there's so many of us out there, and we all need to find the strength and find our voices and tell our stories. That's the only way we're going to heal. That's the only way we're going to heal as a country, because this stuff is so prevalent. I started learning about this back in the early 90s. My husband was big time into searching government conspiracy theories, and I thought he was an absolute crackpot at the time. And we ran across a book called Behold a Pale Horse by William Milton Cooper. If you have not read that book, it's a very good read. It was our first inkling that there was something seriously wrong with our government and the elite of this world. And then we watched The Conspiracy of Silence, which is about the Franklin scandal in the early 90s and Boys Town and Larry King. That is a definite watch if you want to find out more about the conspiracies in the government, because it goes way deep. The things we're seeing right now as far as being exposed, I never thought in my lifetime would come out in a public forum, ever. So that gives me hope and courage that this world is inherently good, and that there are so many more good people out there that want to do right in this world and want to be happy than are doing the wrong things. And I cannot wait until we see the day when all these pedo people are marched off to Gitmo and never seen or heard from again. Anyways, thank you for allowing me to tell my story. And thank you, Isaac Cappy, for inspiring me to do so. I don't want to give the details of what happened with these guys, but all I can tell you is that they were very violent murders. They were very nasty murders that involved cannibalism and satanic ritual practices of cutting up pieces and eating them and everything. So I escaped with my life. Because at 14 years old, staying in this guy's house and nobody knowing where I was, I could have disappeared and never been seen or heard from again. So, by the grace of God, I'm here today to tell my story. Thank you very much.